Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with over 4 million listeners. I am your host, Suspense author Danielle Girard, and our guest today is Marcy McCreary. After graduating from George Washington University with a BA in American Literature and Political Science, Marcy pursued a career in the marketing field, holding executive positions in marketing communications and sales at various magazine publishing companies and content marketing agencies. Her debut novel, The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon, was a Killer Nashville Silver Falchion 2022 finalist. That's a mouthful. The second book in the Ford family mystery series, The Murder of Madison Garcia, will be released March 2023. So that is right this minute. Marcy has 2 daughters and 2 stepdaughters who live in Brooklyn, New York, Nashville, Tennessee, Madison, Wisconsin, and Seattle, Washington. She lives in Hull, Massachusetts with her husband, Lou. Welcome, Marcy.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for having me on your program.
It's
Excited
so fun
be
to
here.
have you. I know. And Marcy and I have met a couple times at Thriller Fest and also at BoucherCon. Exactly. So that's fun. Sometimes I'm talking to people I've never actually met in person, but I know Marcy. So Marcy, it's kind of exciting because we get to talk about 2 books. But let's start with, can you tell our listeners a little bit about The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon?
So The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon takes place in the Catskill regions of New York, what was affectionately known as, or maybe derisively known as, the Borscht Belt. And it's actually a place where I spent my summers. My father was the activities director at the Brickman Hotel. And it was a coming of age adventure for me. And I know I always wanted to set a story there. You know, I didn't want sort of like a Dirty Dancing or a Marvelous Hazel, right? Like that's how people would think about the Borscht Belt. I love mystery. I grew up reading mystery. I am a mystery lover aficionado. So I knew I wanted it to be a mystery. And one day I read an article. The article was in the Boston Globe, actually. And it was about a woman, a waitress from the Concord Hotel who went missing in the 1970s. And then skeletal remains were found on the side of the road a few years ago, and they figured, okay, it's this woman. But when they did a social security check, they decided to kind of open up the case, and somebody did a social security check. It pinged at a Alzheimer's facility in Lowell, Massachusetts. So the detectives went out there, and they were able to discern that it was this missing woman. Her name was Flora Stevens. And I thought to myself, okay, well, what happened to her in all those years? How did she get from being a waitress to ending up in an Alzheimer's facility? What happened?
And who do the bones belong to?
The bones, who knows? There was no follow-up on this story whatsoever.
That is so interesting.
It just got stuck in my brain. I think,
of course,
there's the writer Elizabeth Gilbert. She always says like this like something gets stuck in your brain like a little fairy, and it just gnaws at you and gnaws at you. And I was like, there is a story here.
Yeah.
Why don't I just make up the story? Fill in the blanks of what happened in the last 40 years. And I think that because my father played such a large role in my coming of age and being in the Catskills and really understanding the area.
Yeah.
He's an expert. I got the idea of a father-daughter detective team where the daughter is not a young woman. She's around my age. She's in her early 50s at the start of the series. And her father is retired. So he's a retired detective. And wouldn't it be cool if there was a connection between the case and his connection to the area and his connection to who Trudy Solomon is, and can kind of consult and help her with the case. So that's how that came about. It was just a seed of a story from the Boston Globe,
right?
That stuck in my head.
I mean, stories, the seeds come from so many different places. So when you got the little muse, and I think Elizabeth Gilbert also says that if you don't sort of take hold of that muse, then she'll fly away and find somebody who will tell her story. So it's important also to sort of be like, okay, that's my story and I'm going to write it. Which I think is so interesting. So tell us about the main character, Susan Ford. You know, I'm curious about sort of how she came to you, what about her appeals to you? Do you see yourself? I know you have a close relationship with your dad. So do you see yourself in Susan? Tell us a little bit about her.
I don't know if I see myself in Susan. I wanted to make someone who was very contemplative, someone who had a more traumatic upbringing. So you see in the story, she's a very tumultuous relationship with her mother. So I just want to make that perfectly clear because my
That is
mom,
not right. That's not me.
that woman is not my mother. My mother's not an alcoholic.
Yes.
So she had a very tumultuous relationship. So I really wanted to really look at the family dynamic of Susan, her father, someone who she did get along well with growing up, and her mother, who she did not. So it's really important that they had very distinct personalities. I would say Will maybe is a little bit like my father. He's a schmoozer. He likes to know everybody. He kind of thinks from his gut. So if I wanted to give them sort of like conflict and tension in the scenes, I needed the detective Susan Ford to be very different personality wise and how she approaches a case, very different from her father, who's like, he's got his spidey senses and everything is from his gut. And he's like, you just have to trust your instincts. And she's like, no, Dad, you have to follow the evidence. So you kind of see them going at a case in a different kind of way, and
Right.
evolves even further in the second. And I'm in the middle of editing the third book, and it evolves even in another direction in the third book because I didn't want their relationship to stay the same throughout the
Right.
three books. Like there's this broad character arc with the three of them, and then each story though it's a standalone murder mystery. You don't have to read The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon to enjoy the murder of Madison Garcia, but there is a character arc that is being
Right.
created across all three books.
So did you know when you wrote when you wrote The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon, did you know you were writing a series, or did you finish the book and sort of think, okay, wait, there's more here?
Okay, so I was not planning on writing a series, and I actually had started a second novel, which explains why there's a year and a half difference between when one came out and then the other. I'd started another novel. I was well into another novel.
Yeah.
And that Publishers Weekly review came out that said, an enticing series start. I'm like, wait, what? I called the publisher, was like, well, do you want to write a series? And I was like, yeah, you know what? I actually have an idea in my head. And I think I can get going on it. So I took the other novel and I put it in the drawer. And I came up with this new idea for Madison Garcia and started writing. So yeah, so it wasn't planned. It wasn't planned at all.
Can you tell us about Madison Garcia? I mean, not, I want to, we might as well tell you, since you've got two books for us already, as of this month, we might as well hear about the second story too. And, what was, if there was a seed for that story. It sounds like you had an idea from somewhere.
I had an idea, and it's not as interesting as where I got the first idea from. It wasn't like some lightning strike, and it wasn't based on like, oh, this is fascinating. I got a unknown call on my phone, and it said, it says unknown caller, and it said Cleveland, Ohio, or something like that. And I was like, all right, I'm curious. I did a reverse, you could do a reverse lookup on white pages. I do a reverse lookup and I see some guy's name. And so I go to Facebook to look him up. I'm just curious, is it somebody that I know, right? I go and look him up, and it's a pretty private page. It's pretty shut down, like my page. Like I have an author page and personal page. It's very hard to get to my personal page. You'll see pictures, but that's about it. And I really couldn't discern who he was, right? So I was like, oh, whatever. So then I was thinking, what if? And this is what I do all the time. I do with every scene. I do it with when I'm just kind of brainstorming. I always say, what if? What if this happened? What if Susan got that call? And what if that whoever called her ended up dead the next morning. And if she took the call and if she figured it out, maybe that person would still be alive. I was like,
Right.
okay, there's the inciting incident right there.
Well, it
And
is, and that is just how the writer brain works, right? It doesn't take much. I mean, I think that's all it takes is a little tiny seed of, and it's a great what if. It is, especially when then you raise the stakes by the guy's dead, and she feels some sort of connection, and she's also, why did he call me, and what did he want, and what would why didn't he leave a message, and what would he have said if I had gotten him on the phone? So that's interesting.
exactly, and I'm a pantser. Like I'm a
Okay,
pantser.
I was just going to ask about that. So tell us about your process.
So I generally, in my head, I know the beginning and I know the end. So I know who did it. Like I have to know that. I also have the character arc in my head. So I have the personal character arc, beginning and end, the plot, beginning and end. It might change, but then I just go. And I think, and you might know this too from your books, because you write police procedurals, right? Police procedurals are logical. You find something out, you turn over a stone, and it leads you to the next clue. So
Right.
it feels very natural to pants to some extent. So I can do and say, okay, she just found out this, and that leads her to this suspect or this person or more
Right.
information. And it feels very natural to actually write without outlining, as long as I know where I want to go. And then I guess at the end is when I go back. I sort of do like a reverse outline, like after I write the story, then I outline. And then this way I go back and I just feather in red herrings or breadcrumbs and real clues and subtext, and make sure it's all flowing correctly. But
So you how long is that initial draft for you? Like, is it more skeletal? Like it's 60,000 words, or is it a full, draft of the whole book?
I use the 3-act method, right? So I have to have in my mind sort of where the pinch points or the beats are. So I aim for like 75,000 words. And I am writing subtext, I am writing deep dialogue, and I am writing as much as I can, thinking about the beats over the 75,000 words. But, I think I probably right now with the novel that I'm writing now, The Summer of Love and Death, which is the 3rd installment, I got to 72,000 words and was finished, like the end. Then I got to 82,000 and now I'm back to 78. So, in the editing process, I'll then fill in, and then I'm like, okay, do I still have my beats? Did my beats get all thrown off? I got to kill some. I generally do kill some darlings. As I stand, it's so hard, right? Like, oh, I love this scene. This scene is so good. And then a day later, I'm like, well, if I had even thought a little bit about the fact that it doesn't belong there, you know what? Probably doesn't belong there.
That's hard to do, right? Create words and make them go away because they're so hard to come by. So, people, I think, we have a lot of listeners who are obviously aspiring authors. Did you have, like, when you were learning to do this, did you feel like there was a book or books that were really helpful, or did you dissect books that you loved? How did you teach yourself?
That's a great question, because I think a lot of my early learning was just reading. I just read as a lot of mystery and suspense and thriller. So I think innately, or intuitively, I should say, have some idea of those beats. Like, I don't feel like, that's why I feel like I don't need to outline it. I do feel like I have some intuitive, when I'm writing, a sort of, okay, no, this has to happen now. Like, here's a good list, right? So I'd say that's sort of like I think just reading a lot. Like, I think it's important to read the genre that you want to write, because you really have to understand, even understanding the tropes, because understanding the tropes allows you to flip the trope. It allows you to sort of think a different way of presenting it.
Explain what you mean by that, because I think that's a really valid point. And I'm not sure everybody that is listening understands what you mean by tropes and how you understand them and then can flip them.
So like, a trope even in my book is you can even say that, small town detective series has its series of tropes. You have these certain characters.
Right.
You might have like, you always have like a clergy, I don't know in my book.
Right.
You
Right.
always have these characters that, and these plot points that, like a good one is in a cozy, a lot of times, the person who gets killed opens the front door and says, "Oh, great to see you," and then you find out he's dead. So you know that
Right.
the
Right.
killer is somebody that he
They
knows,
knew.
right? And so
Exactly.
it's like, how can you take some of these ideas that are pretty like you see in a lot of Agatha Christie or Dorothy Sayers or P.D. James, and kind of make them your own, and that's sort of what I think about when I think about some of the tropes that I use. I just want to make them somewhat original, like somebody just sees them in a new light. So I don't want to give away too much, but I don't want to give any spoilers because a lot of it has to do with
fair.
like how I use a trope and it would turn out being a spoiler, so I can't do it.
Exactly. I think it's kind of like, it's fun to talk about sort of those things that we expect this like small town stereotype to play out in certain ways. And it's fun when it does, but it's also fun when it doesn't. So,
Right.
it's fun to take something that the readers expect. Sometimes it's fun to meet their expectations, and oftentimes it's also fun to sort of blow their expectations apart. Well, I want to go back to just, Trudy again,
I do want to say, wait,
because
Danielle, can I just say one more thing? Because you asked me
yes.
like, what else sort of helped me write?
Oh, yes, yes.
My husband is a writer. He writes
Oh,
literary fiction. I have some of his books up on my shelf.
oh, wow.
Those books came out a while ago. Then he got a real job. He was an editor of a magazine, and it kind of took him out of writing.
Yeah,
He is a phenomenal writer, and he reads my stuff, and
yeah,
he will say, "Marcy, you could do better. Marcy, this is a cliche." He drives me to be a better writer. And he's an editor too. I mean, that's so rare. He's a writer and he's an editor.
yeah.
And so I do want to do a shout out to him because
That's nice. Most of us would kill our husbands if they said something like, "This is a cliche," or "You can do better." We'd be like, you try this job. So
right, but I
that's
keep
lovely.
saying it to him because he truly is a beautiful writer. Like if
Yes.
you see something in my book that just sounds, you know, I don't know, it just sounds like that he knows, he just knows he could push me. He could push me to do
Yeah.
it, say it
Yeah.
better, write it better. Yeah.
It's great to have, whether it's your husband or whomever, it's really important to have somebody who knows what you're capable of and can say, this isn't quite up to snuff for you. So one of we talk about the story, and it's about sort of a perfect family, right? That when someone near them goes missing, they lose their shine of perfection. And I was curious to know if that, what about that is interesting to you? Is there something appealing about the downfall of a wealthy family? Or why are we, I guess, as a society, we're often interested in like how, things go awry for the wealthy more than just when things go awry for regular folks.
Yeah, so the Roth family in the Disappearance of Trudy Solomon,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed creating that family because they're the villains, right? And they're the family that presents itself as the perfect family. And that's how Susan saw them growing up. And there's also, Susan's young. So her perception of them is definitely that of a young person looking at a family that just seems to have their act together, where her
Hmm.
family is falling apart.
Right.
She's embarrassed about her family. She's her mother's an alcoholic, and she's got this best friend Lori who seems to, all the family gets along. But then when Trudy Solomon disappears and she has to go back as an adult and start peeking into their lives, well, then she begins to see, oh, things weren't as rosy
Mm-mm.
as she thought they were. And in fact, I mean, they were really quite awful. And what's really interesting too is you get the juxtaposition of her father, who was their contemporary at the time, and
Hmm.
even he felt that that he was not on even footing with that family, that they were, socioeconomically, they were, higher, they were hotel owners. So, and
Right.
he was a detective, he was a cop. And
Right.
even in the area itself, there was definitely differences between the hotel owners, the hotel staff, and what we call
Sure.
the townies, So,
Mm-hmm.
so for Susan to all of a sudden, really see what this family was about, I thought was a lot of fun. And
Well,
I didn't make them villainous without making them caricatures either.
right. Well, which I think is actually it's such a true thing that happens to us, right? Our perception of things when we're a kid, whether it be of our own family or other families, or, things are they can look a very certain way until we grow up old or become old enough or get enough insight to see the other sort of ugly underbelly. And I love that as as a it's something to explore, because I do think everything is, it's so relevant to our lives that we see things differently as we get older and as we understand more, and nothing is really as perfect as it seems, right?
Right. And I wanted to bring that idea of family dysfunction it to all three books, actually. But in the Murder of Madison Garcia, it looks at it in a slightly different way. I mean, it's a
Okay.
family,
Yeah.
different family dynamics. In the Murder of Madison Garcia, Vera has entered Alcoholics Anonymous. She's on a more even footing with Susan. So the family dynamic changes. Also, in the first book, her father was invited onto the case because he was familiar enough with it, and she really did need his help. In the Murder of Madison Garcia, he is not invited in the case, and he figures out ways to come in. So the family dynamic changes for the Fords, whereas Susan is finding herself more in tune with her mother and trying to bring that relationship along. And she is really pissed at her dad. He's meddling in a way that she finds, that he's too close to Madison Garcia's family to really help her. Like, she's afraid that that's like getting in the way. So the family dynamic changes up.
Yeah. Which is so true of our the way things work for us. It's like, really, especially with our parents, right? It's so the relationship's been going on so long. There's so many layers to it. There's the child in us and the adult in us. And it's interesting to me that, of course, Susan wants autonomy in her job, even though her dad was also in the same job, right? And that's another really interesting relationship exploration. So I love that. So tell us about the process for of your publication. Was The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon the first book you ever wrote? I know a lot of us have books sort of
No.
in a drawer. So can you tell us about that, and also about finding a publisher, because it looks like you're working with a small press and people may not be as familiar with that experience. So that's sort of a multi question.
Okay, so I do have what I know a lot of people refer to them as their practice books.
Yeah.
So my practice book was a book called The Deeper You Dig. And it's actually, it's a 3-point of view. A coming of age is one story, and then 2 adult females. And it takes place here in my hometown of Hull. And I wrote it over like a 3-year period, mainly like whenever I was laid off. I think I started it when I was laid off from a job, and then continued writing it over weekends. Just because I really enjoyed doing it, and I wanted to see if I could do it, right?
Right.
75,000 cogent words that make an interesting story. And I remember reading Stephen King's On Writing. So you asked me like, what books I read? That one I really liked. I mean, I've read a
Me
lot
too.
of that one really stuck with me on sort of discipline, like maybe not on the actual writing itself, but the discipline of writing. And I really, that really stuck with me. And anyway, so I wrote that book, and then COVID hit, and the book was actually done. Like, I was going to just like give it to friends and family, whatever. But my lovely children said, "Ma, what if you die? What if you die from COVID?" I'm like, well, what?
Nice. Thank you, children. Lovely.
You need legacy, right? I'm like, they're like, self-publish it. Everybody's like, what's the big deal? You're old, whatever. I'm like, oh my God.
That's so lovely. Children love us in the best way,
Totally
don't they?
right. But they encouraged me to do it. And you know what? It was fun. I loved the experience of it. And my friends and family got to hold a book. My
Yeah.
mom used to tell people that, I had a book, whatever. But at that time, I was also seriously thinking about writing a mystery, something that I really, and that's when I saw the article, and I was like, no, I want to write a book, and I want to write a book that I think is marketable, for a broad marketable book. So I wrote The Disappearance of Trudy Solomon with that goal in mind, where I wasn't, the deeper you dig, I don't even think I thought about getting it published. I might have reached out to a few agents, but it wasn't like sort of
It
where
was
my
for
head
you. It was more for you.
was, to see if I can do it. And then
Yeah.
and it's up there. I mean, it's on Amazon. If
Yeah.
anybody wanted it, it's not, it's a secrets and lies book, as opposed to a mystery, but
Yeah.
I wrote Trudy Solomon, and I started reaching out to agents, and then noticed that small press will take unagented manuscripts. So at the
Yes.
same time I was reaching out to agents, I was reaching out to small presses, and CamCat was interested. And I talked to the editor there, who would be the editor for my books. Her name is Helga, and she just really got the book. She got the heart of the book, understood sort of, especially because there's the mystery, but I think what's really near and dear in my to me in these books are the subplots of the family, the subplot
The
of what's
relationships.
going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, the relationships, and what's going on underneath the surface of the mystery. And that's what she focused on. And I was like, she really got, and she says, I can really, we can really work on this book. And so I went with them. I didn't, I thought, maybe it has to do with my age. Maybe if I was 30 years younger, I would have held out for an agent and the big five. But I really enjoyed my conversations with
Yeah.
CamCat. I really felt like, and I came on with them when they were just starting out. They are now, I think they're publishing like 30 books a year. They really
Wow.
offer so much marketing support. I really like what they're doing. So, if anybody is out there and thinking about a small press, again, it is an avenue to go. It's,
Yeah.
it's for me, it felt right at the time, and it still feels really right. So I'm happy.
Good.
So,
And I think a lot of people don't know that, that you can go that, and it's interesting that sometimes it feels like it's harder to get an agent than it is to sell a book. Like, I think there's so many gates in front of us for, for agents, and agents, that it's such a gamble for them that oftentimes they don't necessarily take people on unless they sort of feel like it's a sure thing. So I think it's a lovely, and if they're doing a good job in marketing support, well, then that is all all the more power to you. I'm not
marketing,
from, yeah.
yeah, distribution, they're
Yeah.
with IPG, which is, so it gets me everywhere.
Yeah.
They have a few of their books now, with movie right people. I mean, they really are trying to drive the books in a way. Maybe they're on a smaller scale than the big five, but you still
Yeah.
feel like, it for me, it feels like a good place to be. I'm not saying it's for everyone. There are people who really want the agent, really want the big five, really want that massive support. And if my book went that way, I think I would have been totally happy with that as well. But
Yeah.
this is working for me. So yeah.
It's so great. And I mean, like you said, that, I mean, one of the hardest things to do, I think, is to get the attention of trade publications. And you got a beautiful Publishers Weekly quote. So, I mean, that shows that CamCat's doing something right. So that's
Yeah.
really exciting, because it's like you said, in this enticing series launch, more than one twist will catch the reader by surprise. And that's from Publishers Weekly, which is, it's a big deal. So that's
I
awesome.
felt really good at the time. And even, going to, writers who are interested. I mean, I think one of the best investment that I made last year and will be doing this year is going to those conferences where we met at BoucherCon, is meeting other authors. To
Yeah.
me, that was everything. And I mean, even being on a panel, talking to readers, talking to other authors,
Yep.
to me, that was everything. That was the icing on the cake. Trudy Solomon came out during COVID at the height, during
Yeah,
that way. I couldn't do a book tour. I
I
couldn't do,
know.
I kind of feel like the Murder of Madison Garcia is my real book launch, is my coming out, because
Yeah, so are you going to be, yeah, are you going, do you have a, some, in-person events happening?
I do. So I will be at the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City on launch day, March 28th. I
So
am
fun.
so excited. Like, that is a dream come true.
Yeah.
I went in there early November with my daughter and met with Ryan, who
Yeah.
runs the bookshop, and had a lovely conversation with him. And I think if you give yourself enough time, is November all the way to March, I was able to secure a book event there.
So fun. So fun.
So I can't wait. So, and I'll be doing a book event at my local indie store, which is called Buttonwood Books and Toys, on April 4th. I'm going to Madison, Wisconsin, where my stepdaughter lives,
Mhm.
to do an event there at Mystery to Me. Again, it's somebody that I met at VoucherCon. She was the store owner. So again, it's
So
like,
fun.
right, that it's just a really great place to make
Yeah.
connections. Yeah. So I'm
Plus,
really,
I think authors are really generous. Booksellers are generous. Everybody's sort of, there is this sort of like everybody supports, everybody, because it's none of us is writing enough books to satisfy all readers, right? So everybody is like, it's every book is, for somebody new, and readers. I mean, they read hundreds of books a year. It's amazing. So I think it's wonderful to make those connections.
yeah, I mean, even like, I've read a number of your books, Danielle, and
Oh, thank you.
I read yours and I'm like, you are dark. Yours are
Ah,
dark. And I'm
yes.
like, but I would love to. You have such a gritty stuff. Like, I love your style of
Thank
writing,
you.
and yours
Thank
is
you.
the darker police procedurals, almost like Tracy Clark. Like, there was, like, but you're also sort of small town. The setting
Hmm.
is everything. The weather is everything. And you've got these wonderful point of views from strong, likable, relatable
Thank you.
protagonist, right? So
Thank you.
you're a go-to, but like, I cannot wait until Close Up comes out. I was
Thank
close,
you.
close. And I was like, I mean, I really, really love smart police procedurals. Tessa Wigert, somebody that I had met at one of
Yes.
these,
Yes.
right? I love Hashana Merchants. It's the same idea. One of my
Yeah.
favorite police procedural series is the Man in Bradshaw series by oh God, I'm blanking out her name. She died last year or
Oh
2 years ago.
God.
But yeah, and it was a brilliant UK police procedural. I think you would like it, Danielle, because
Yeah,
it's it.
you have
I'll
to,
send you the information on her.
yeah.
Susie Steiner. Her name is Susie Steiner,
Okay. I don't know
and she
her.
wrote three police procedurals with the protagonist is a woman named Manon Bradshaw. And I fell in love with those books. I think that series was really sort of the catalyst for me to write.
Hmm.
I was like, I want to write a book with a strong female protagonist,
Yeah.
like Danielle
Yeah.
Gerard, like Tessa Wigert. I want to do
Love
that.
it. Well, you've done it. I love that, Marcy. Well, so book is coming out on the 28th. And so tell us first of all, where to find you online. Like, if they Instagram, people like to, we always, everywhere, Facebook, Instagram. And then I want to
I'm
ask one more question.
everywhere. I'm mostly on Instagram. I love
Yeah.
Instagram. I find Instagram is sort of like very laid back. You can do nice, artistic stuff. I'm not on Twitter as much as I should be. I just don't know how
Mhm.
anybody like. I think you have to be there a lot to sort of have some sort of traction there. I'm not really. I tweet once in a while, but I'm not really. I am trying to do TikTok. I am really trying to do TikTok, but that
I
means that means having to put makeup on. That means having to come up with an idea. That means having to.
Right.
I mean, it's
It's
so
a
tiring
lot.
for
Yeah,
me. Oh
it's a
my,
lot.
But
I feel like it's also I'm in my early 50s and I'm like, I don't know. Am I too old? I feel like it might be too old for TikTok. So I don't know,
there
but
are some
I know it's a thing.
there
It's a
are some
thing.
authors who do it so well.
I
Geneva
know.
Rose, I just want to crack up
That
because
woman
I,
is, yeah, she is a
I
force of nature.
cannot do what she does. But
No,
it's so on brand. She is so good at it with the deadpan and the.
I know.
I I don't. I just couldn't do. I would love to do it.
Yeah.
I'm an extroverted person, and I can't even do it. Like I
Yeah.
just put myself out there,
It's
bringing.
hard. That's another thing that authors really have to do. And I am not an extroverted person, though I'm a I'm a very gregarious introvert, but I'm not an extrovert. So all of these things for me are, you know, they're they take a lot of energy and they're totally intimidating. So it's interesting. But yes, it's part of the business. And, I think the message is, of course, we want to meet people who are reading books like ours or ours, and people who are writing books like ours. Because it's so, it's just there's so little connection when you're actually writing a book, right? Because you are
Right.
by yourself. It's
Yeah, I mean, I
very,
have to split up my day. I really have to think about my day. I write in the morning because I'm a morning person, so I'm just going to
mhm,
be a little bit more brilliant, a little bit more on
sharper, of
in the
course.
morning. And then in the afternoon, I think about marketing. So I put my marketing
Yeah.
hat on. I think, what do
Yeah.
I
And
need?
you
What
have
assets?
experience. So,
Yes, exactly. So what assets do I need to produce? What's the timing on all of this? How do
wow.
when do I put these in? And I actually look at what other authors do, or I speak to, professionals, or watch YouTube videos that tell me like how to place an ad on Amazon, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
they're the marketing, the marketing aspect of it is I'm not, it's not horrible to me. I can sit down and spend some hours and sort of bang out what I need to do. But I do
Right.
love mornings are dedicated
Yeah.
to writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like the writing part better than the business part. But of course, they're both, it's just part of it. All of it's part of it. So, okay. So you told us briefly about the third book that you're working on, but can you tell us again? You had a title, it sounded like, and when that one might be available?
Okay, so the title is The Summer of Love and Death.
Okay.
And the premise of the story is that Susan Ford is investigating a contemporary murder in a summer stock theater that is eerily similar to her father's first case as a detective in 1969.
Right.
And it takes place in the Catskills, right down the road from Yasgur's farm, which was the Woodstock Festival. So now in the third book, he actually has a point of view. And the in between chapters is him in 1969 as he tries to remember his case to help her with her case, because the two
Hmm.
cases, his was a serial murder case, and all of a sudden here's a copycat. But
All these years later. Yeah.
50 years later, the guy is dead. And who is
Right.
reenacting
Right.
these murders? So, and in The Summer of Love and Death, there's also aspects of it that harken back to what it means to for love, and what it, and how death plays into sort of that family dynamic. So
Yeah.
again, the family switches off a little bit, and sort of like, where things are going. And a lot of over the course of the book, these books are about forgiveness and
Mhm.
redemption, especially Vera. Vera is my favorite character. She's
Yeah.
mother, and
Yeah, she has a lot to feel like redeem for, right? I mean, and
without
how
giving too
hard
much
it, yeah, and
away.
how hard is it to be a mom? Like, that's the thing, right? It's a tricky business to, it's a tricky business to be a mom. So I
Yeah,
like her too.
it's so funny because in the third book, I actually, she had a very small role when I finished the first draft, when I finished drafting it. And my editor said to me, like, where's Vera? Like, where's
Right.
Vera's story?
We
And
need
like,
more Vera.
I walked away from it. I was like, you know what? I have an idea for Vera. I have an idea about how this 3-book series is gonna sort of end up, like where Vera ends up with Susan. So
That's so
uh
exciting. And then
yes,
do you think you'll go back to the book you were working on when you started book two?
No.
Isn't that
So
funny?
I
Interesting.
went back to it. I would say I was about 4 chapters in, right? So,
Mhm.
and I read it and I was like, I don't know. I couldn't bring myself back. And I had this other idea in my head.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I got to do this other idea. So no, I might turn that other thing into a short story. Actually,
Mhm.
it's kind of like a little. If I want to do something a little bit more serious, I think. Again, from reading your stuff, Danielle, I was like, I'd really like to try something a little bit. A lot of people say that my books fall somewhere between, like cozy and crime fiction. Like this, I'm straddling somehow those two things, right? I'd like to sort of move more into a crime fiction,
Mhm.
just to see if I can write a little bit more darker and grittier because I love those books. So,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of humor in my books. Like there's like a lot of people say, oh,
Yeah.
there's some really funny lines. You're really funny. And I was like, yeah, I think my books are, there's no outward gore. There's no, like, you don't really
Mm.
see all that stuff.
Right.
It's in the background. Um, so I want to try something
But
that's a little
maybe in the future it'll be more in the foreground. I love that. Well, it sounds like you've got so much going on, and it's just super exciting. So, we know where to find you. We're so excited. This actually, our podcast will come out on March 23rd. So a few days before your second book launches, which will give people a chance to, pick up the disappearance of Trudy. It's probably have it like this. The disappearance of Trudy Solomon. It's always, I look at the computer and it's like
right.
weird for me. It's very confusing. I'm not smart enough to do that. Anyways, so they can read the disappearance of Trudy Solomon before the murder of Madison Garcia gets out. So this was so fun. And I'm really excited, Marcy. I look forward to seeing you at the next conference, and I hope the books do incredibly well.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It was so much fun being on Killer Women. I like to think that I am
Yay!
one of them.
Of course, you are an official Killer Woman. So this has been Killer Women with our guest, Marcy McCreary, and I am Danielle Gerard, and we will see you next time. Bye.